Hello and welcome to another video about manifestation. And I finally found out the structure behind chemical reactions, and now the scheme is physically complete. And now I wanted to present it to you. Made this separate sheet. Every step of physical dimension corresponds to a psychological skill, and there are more timelines, so I have written down the timeline when you go from the smallest particle to the biggest particle, but there's also a timeline from the biggest particles, so from the galaxies and the heavens to the human, to the smallest too. So there's an interaction of time going from smallest to biggest and from biggest to smallest, even though it's in the same time, because time is fractalic in itself, and it allows this definition of time. If you have a fractalic definition of time, your time interactions are split up in 3 or 4 even. I'm not so sure about that yet. The first 5 steps are the hidden steps. So it's imagination, visualization, thoughts, emotion, acceptance. It's the basically evolutionary part of life, because only life can detect them. You cannot detect them without having life. So if you want to detect sound, you can detect it if you have a sound being. If you want to have ethereal detection, you have to be human, or you have to complete the evolution of Prophet Adam and the Satan to get into this level of evolution, and then maybe new prophets would come. Because maybe it's too late and we are going to have a day of judgment because we are gonna fail at it, and God will just destroy the whole universe because we failed at the last evolutionary step. So the first 5 steps are crucial, that they are non-acceptant, because if you want to survive, you want to have hidden things in yourself. But of course there are some ways of manipulating these things and attracting these things. But in itself it's in principle it's undetectable. Imagination, visualization, thoughts, emotions, and acceptance. The biggest flex of Satan is that he does not exist, because Satan cannot manipulate your thoughts. He cannot manipulate your thoughts. He can give you heat waves, he can give you light waves, but he cannot give you thoughts. Imagination is the substance of which the ether particles are made of. Basically there has to be a finite segment of length in order to have multiple lengths. And also if you look from objective and subjective and from the perspective of necessary and possible. Maybe I should write something. So ethereal things are things like what the basic particles are made of. The basic particles, one of them is like this, like a pen, and these represent the visualizations. Light represents thoughts, sound represents emotions, subquarks, and this is the traditional definition of matter, represent acceptance. Movement represents instinct, heat represents intuition, attraction represents inspiration, force represents truth, work represents sincerity, First generation of zoo represents state of being. Grand canonical ensemble of zoo, so color black. State of reflection, exotic colors. Grand canonical zoo, state of resolution. The resolutions after being black. After all generations being added up, you get an exotic level which resolves into a reality shift in the galactic end. And this reality particle point also of view. So how do I come to this conclusion how chemistry works? So first, subquarks you have an atom and you have orbits. And the orbits are a bunch of subquarks. So this is not the Rutherford atom model. This is subquarks, right? Subquarks orbiting a massive point that they use. Maybe it has a physical meaning. And then I just use another particle here, which also has orbits. So this has this eccentric orbits for saying. Maybe I make this somehow bigger. Maybe I should have done the orbit nearer. Okay, no. Okay, I will leave it at that. So we have subquarks, orbitals, and what's the definition of heat, my friends? Heat is shifting energy levels without changing them. As those two orbitals overlap. Heat redistribution of subquarks between atoms without changing the orbitals. Energies. Maybe this is cold heat. Or maybe it's forbidden because it's not a kinetic expression, which then is then that the orbitals don't change. But I said that like they can hop onto these orbitals, and the orbitals are the amount of quarks change in the orbitals, because they can be redistributed between those two once the orbitals overlap. This generates under energy conservation, the redistribution of subquarks. The orbitals don't change. Maybe heat is it's not a good definition here. Then what happens next? Attraction. So the orbitals now attract each other because they have changed in the amount of subquarks that they can load onto an orbital. This subquant amount loads changes the orbital. Because the orbitals have changed, attractive force arises between the atoms. I'm skipping steps when I'm writing this, I know. So the orbital changes and the attraction arises between two atoms. Then, because of inertia and spin inertia, how is it called? Angular. A non-trivial net force arises. This leads to non-inertial, non-trivial work, non-inertial instinct. So what you do is take orbitals, and plug in subquarks. Then you take heat, and you can take quantum mechanics. And then you take work. And then you make QCD. Chemistry is the shit. Chemistry is the new physics. No, better. Chemistry is the new QCD. So as you can see, along the force and the distance. Force along distance. Inertia play a role. So, and what is this corresponding to? So acceptance of subquarks is that they exist, right? It's undetectable. But then you have movement of these subquarks, this instinct. That's two atoms being there with and moving towards each other. They have to move towards each other. When they meet each other, they express heat. The subquarks go to the other orbitals, they change the orbitals because of the collisions and the overlapping. Because it's like a tidal force or a flux or a stream. Now, because it reaches a certain point of this overlapping, that the attraction arises between the two atoms. Attraction arises because now the orbitals have changed their structure. But because they have inertial properties, so a disk spins differently than a rectangular disk, than a square disk. They cause a net force. And then this net force produces work in the line of movement. So the amount of energy which this force generates now depends exactly on the way of calculating the energy along the force is the working distance. And now because of this, the first generation of zoo, so the periodic table, arises. And then this balancing is unbalanced. You have to take all elements, all top quarks. You have to form elements from top quarks. You have to form elements from strange quarks. Take every element. And then you have to go to the exotic. So you take exotic atoms. So generations mixed, I don't know, exotic combinations of hadrons, baryons, nucleons. And this, of course, logically resolutes everything. So it completes the cycle. And the first, so these correspond to galaxies. Like the first one, the first generation, so it's like if you crack that, you can fly through our galaxy and our solar system. If you crack the grand canonical ensemble, you can fly through the first heaven. And if you get the exotic grand canonical, you can switch the heavens. So there's a big star, very big star. Very big star. There are 7 bands. This is the first band, for example. Oh no, this is the first band. There are many bands. Right. I make it smaller. Here's the universe, here's one, here's the big star. Okay, I make it red. This big star. Here's the first universe. So the first heaven, sorry, the first heaven. And then the second heaven comes. And now it's rotated like this. It happens to be at this clock, for example. And this is the Layl of Qadr, so the holy month, holy day. That's a random day which arises when the heavens align to a 7-shaped ring. And the best part of the Earth is it's in the teleportation hole. So galaxies can jump. So if there's a galaxy here, it jumps, it makes a screenshot. And this galaxy jumps here. So those 13 billion years is only our galaxy. They jump, or they are jumping, or it's everything, but they jump, and we see how they jump when we detect them. But they are real fast. We say the jump speeds. The galaxies can jump from one heaven to another heaven. They teleport. And when they teleport, we can see them. Because normally we cannot see them. Every galaxy we can see has jumped to our heaven. Because it's really hard to see them through the ether. No, this galaxy is huge, and the star is huge. And maybe there was a battle where they made this star to 2 stars, and this was Buddha who made this. It's really crazy, man. Crazy stuff. So I want to say that manifestation is not some random shit. It is psychological steps corresponding to physical steps, and I wanted to give an outlet on chemistry and heat. How chemistry and heat works. And so the ethereal is like this. For example, we have an ether particle here, and it flies around with another ether particle. But then what happens is they explode. But then they reshape, for example, which particles are there? I make this the green. This is the ethereal state, you know. For example, if the Quran says Elif, Lam, Mim, how to write that? It's an equation. It means this particle gets destroyed, it gets transformed to this particle. And with the meme, I don't know what this meme means. So everything in Quran is equation and etherical, but it's not Ethereum. In practice, you can read the Ethereum because the letters change and the words change. So in practical, it's also Ethereum. But maybe there will be Ethereum book. Maybe only the scientists can make it. So, as you can see, this is the first and the second step, then light. Well, this is imagination and this is visualization. So the right part is imagination, the left part is visualization. And light, I don't know how light is. I don't know light. What's light? Maybe the light is this. And sound is this. I don't know what light is, so light has no description yet. Write it in the comments. Sound, I have no description. Subquarks, I have only indirect description. Movement, heat, attraction, force, work. So I have only discovered things that are not known. About the things that are known, I have no idea of. Also, we also have discovered the last generation of particles. So this jump of galaxies. So we have something in the middle. So we are humans. We are humans, humanity. And plant life, we have the last step of plant life, which is the first life of galactic life. So the first life of galactic life, this explains why Adam, in his time, we could see spaceships in the space and aliens everywhere, but the war broke out, you know, the humans, and were captivated. So thank you for listening. This is how reality works, basically. And it's everything. It's like it's so fucking great. So fucking great. Movement. Work. So I will get something from the Quran. Or don't. So just so basically different languages and different letter systems correspond to different particle physics. So the letters of the Quran, the numbers, so to say, are based off this ether particles. Some are saying that the Hebrew letters are based off sound particles, and the other letters correspond in different languages to other particle descriptions, so dimensions, so the steps. For example, heat or subquark, light, work, force. Because the ancient humans knew this, and the only thing left were letters from this crazy physics. So Chinese is a different physics, Indonesian is a different physics, Egyptian is a different physics, everything is a different physics. As soon as you have letters and descriptions there, it's a form of physics, I would say. But thank you for being here. Let's see each other in the next episode.